Episode 15, O Ye Little Town of Marmosa. Gather up the kids and the old folks. Shut down the contraptions and dim the lights. Put away your pocket-sized magic lantern shows. Close your eyes and listen. It's time to strike off on the paths less traveled, down trails through the hills and hollers, along the riverbanks and into the brush. Hear tales of things often forgotten, or maybe best kept that way, get told. Join me as we venture into the wild and woolly Ozarks. I'm your native guide and host, Champ Heron. Welcome back, gentle people. Thank you for once again finding your way to our fireside. Pull up a chair and rest yourself. This is an episode you truly will not want to miss. If you're my age, if you're 10 to 20 years older, if you're my age or 10 to 20 years younger, this episode has something for you. Should be informative and entertaining. The I and E of podcasting. Before we go any further, if you have not subscribed to this wonderful podcast, followed it or joined it or made any other public declaration of support, please do so now. We sure do appreciate it. It helps us grow and upgrade the podcast. It brings exciting episodes like the one we have today. I apologize for any ads that may appear. We're still trying to cut that out of the works. And also a shout out to all our friends and neighbors who tell me they love the podcast, suggest topics, and guests. A big thank you. I've also got a task for you. Those of you on newspapers.com, should you find a unique story that you think we would like to, particularly something seasonal this time of year for Christmas coming up or New Year's, we would love to share that with our community out there. I think we could, they don't have to be, murderous or have a ghost or something like our other topics, just something entertaining. Local color. I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to do some local color. I've got some local color lined up, and I want to roll with that for a while as a regular slate. Also, anybody who has been listening, we've recorded several podcasts and we have not put them out yet. They're going to be coming out. You'll probably hear this one sometime after Thanksgiving, but check out the superstitions on snow and what our winter weather is going to look like and send them in to us. Of course, you send those in at wild and woolly, wild in, it's an in, and was already taken. Wild and woolly, that's two O's, two L's, and a Y, wild and woolly Ozarks at gmail.com. We appreciate you. Thank you kindly. You all are the best. As a Gen Xer in the Ozarks, many have a favorite memory of Silver Dollar City. Maybe it's the year the plunge opened up. Maybe it's the Lost River. Maybe you sought cold refuge from a hot day in grandfather's mansion. Today's guest has a lot to share on the subject. I am talking about the one and only Mark Kumming. Mark is the co-administrator of the Silver Dollar City Fans Group Facebook page. SDC Fans is a completely unofficial fan-run Facebook page and web page that chronicles the goings-on of Silver Dollar City. Mark is also a former employee of Silver Dollar City. He is a freelance writer whose work appeared in such regional publications as the Ozark Mountaineer, me too, buddy, just a few, the Ozarks Reader, the Missouri Chigger, you might have to explain that one, Life in the Ozarks, and the Society of Ozarkian Hillcrofters newsletter. Mark's Across the Ozarks column on Ozark history appears weekly in the Pea Ridge Times newspaper at Pea Ridge, Arkansas, and online. His column also occasionally appears in the McDonald County Press at Pineville, Missouri, the West Side Eagle Observer at Gentry, Arkansas, and the Weekly Vista at Bella Vista, Arkansas. Over the years, Mark has put together books featuring his published writings on various topics of Ozark folkways, and those books are available at Amazon.com. We're going to ask him to unpack those for us after the topic. So, Mark, welcome to the Wild and Woolly Ozarks. We're glad to have you with us.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you asking me to do the show. It's always a lot of fun for me to talk about Silver Dollar City. I've got a long relationship with the theme park, and I'm looking forward to things tonight.
Well, we're glad to have you here. We talked a little bit before, and I shared with you that I'm 50, and I was born in 1975, and I remember Branson in that area before the boom happened. Of course, I remember it very well, and part of that is Silver Dollar City. And so the outline we've got is like a trip down memory lane for me. And so I'm very excited to get to venture down this rabbit trail with you.
Well, thanks a lot. Let me go ahead and start off tonight by discussing my background and history with Silver Dollar City. I can remember my family living in the St. Louis area way back in the 1960s when I was just a little tot. And we visited Silver Dollar City for the first time on a vacation around 1969 or 1970. This would have been about the time that the Beverly Hillbillies episodes had been shot and aired on national television. And I remember watching those episodes at home in St. Louis as a little kid, and my parents talking and saying, we need to take the kids to Silver Dollar City. It would be a fun vacation. So about, just a few months after those episodes aired, we definitely were down there in Branson on vacation. It was a different town back then, a lot smaller. And I just remember 2 days of fun at Silver Dollar City. Now, by just a twist of fate, only just a few years later, in 1978, my family moved to Branson. And my brother and I were especially excited about that because, Branson was like the Midwest vacation paradise. And we just couldn't believe our luck at being able to move to that town and go to school there. Well, not only did we move there, but within about 2 months, as a 15-year-old kid, I had a job at Silver Dollar City. The first couple of years I was there, I worked in the restaurants and in the concessions. And then when I was 17, going into my senior year at Branson High School, I transferred over to the attractions department, and I worked at many of the rides and attractions that are no longer there now. And so I've got all kinds of memories that I can talk about tonight regarding some of those classic Silver Dollar City rides and shows and attractions that people that are between their mid-40s to their mid-60s will remember very fondly from the days when they were young.
Well, why don't you? I like to begin everything in the beginning, to quote Barry Fitzgerald from The Quiet Man. Let's begin at the beginning. Why don't you share with us some of the origins? And truly, I want to I want to do more on Silver Dollar City, and so I'm just going to reach out right now. If you're a long time employee or no more history or a Hershend, please feel free to reach out to the podcast. I'm going to find a way to talk to them in the meantime, but if they should hear this first, please reach out to us. We want to visit with you, particularly about the cave and some of the other things. So, if you don't mind, start us off.
Well, certainly. The history of Silver Dollar City goes back to 1960. That's when the park itself actually opened. The Herschen family in the 1950s lived in the Chicago area. And Hugo and Mary Herschen were looking for some sort of a retirement venture to just keep themselves busy and bring in a little supplemental income. Now, they had vacationed in the Ozarks for many, many years, and they became friends with the Lynch sisters, the two sisters who owned Silver Dollars, or actually owned Marble Cave and the property around it back in those days. And the Lynch sisters got to the point where they were ready to retire, so Hugo and Mary Herschen asked if they could take over the business and make improvements to it, and the Lynch sisters said yes. So starting in the 1950s, Hugo and Mary Herschen and their sons Jack and Pete moved down to Marble Cave. There were several cabins that used to be rented out over there, and there was a little tea room and a kind of a sandwich shop or a restaurant that the Lynch sisters operated. And the Herschens took it all over and immediately began making improvements to the cave. They put in electric lights and concrete pathways and improved the entrance tower. And over a period of time, they blasted out a second entrance to the cave and put in a funicular so that instead of guests having to double back around and walk all the way back up that tower from 500 feet below the ground, they could just jump on the funicular and it would pull them on up around to where they went into the cave at, and it would make for a smoother flow of traffic, and they could move more people through. Well, unfortunately, during this time that Silver or the Herschen family were making improvements to the cave, Hugo Herschen suddenly died of a heart attack. And now Mary Herschen was left a widow, and her sons were at college age, and they were in the military, and they really had to think hard about, did they want to continue to pursue the business there, or what it was they wanted to do. Well, they did, of course, decide to continue making improvements to the cave, but they noticed something in the late 50s. They were so successful in drawing bigger crowds to go on cave tours that they found out that there were pretty good crowds of people just coming on up, buying a ticket for a tour, and then they would have to wait an hour or two standing around doing nothing until it was time for their tour. Well, they came up with the idea that if they put a little frontier village with a few shops and so forth around the entrance to the cave, that not only would give something for their guests to do while they were waiting for their cave tour, but it would be an additional source of income. And so they got together with a lot of people in the Branson area who either had some sort of business sense or knew of some of the old-time Ozark ways, and they put all their heads together, and Mary Herschen was able to successfully get some loans at a Branson bank, and they were able to open up the Main Street area of Silver Dollar City with a few shops and with the Wilderness Church and the McHappy Homestead in May of 1960. Well, the Herschen family just saw more and more of an increase in visitors to Marble Cave Park, as they called it. And at the end of their summer season, they started counting up all their revenue and taking a survey of how their business had gone that year, and they figured something out real quick. They didn't just operate a cave; they were now in the theme park business. Silver Dollar City's uh, visitation took them up to about 125,000 people in that first year, which was a radical increase from the people who went through the cave alone the year before. And so as time progressed, Silver Dollar City continued to grow, and now it's the flagship of the largest privately owned theme park or themed entertainment company in America.
It's quite a quite a leap in that the Hershey boys have seen in their lifetime. That's it was just a wonderful story. First of all, I love to see somebody build something. Um, but I was going to ask you, speaking of buildings, what were the first? I know the ice cream parlor, the general store, um, the old Silver Mine restaurant, which may or may not still be there. Those were some of those that were up front, right up there, and the blacksmith shop, right?
Yes, that's correct. The blacksmith shop, the general store, the Wilderness Church, the McCaffey Homestead, the hospitality house.
Hmm.
That was where the cave activities, of course, were centered. And the ice cream parlor, I think, also served some food at the time. That was really about it. The Lucky Silver Mine restaurant you're thinking about, where Molly's Mill is now, and the buffet, that actually came a few years later.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, but the thing that might seem really unusual to people who visit the park now is that parking was allowed up on the Main Street area. It was just a big gravel parking lot, and of course now they've got the extended parking lots that they have. But yeah, the first few years Silver Dollar City was open, first of all, there was no admission charge because it was Silver Dollar City was just the side business. The cave was still the main thing, and there weren't that many attractions. They did have some street entertainment and some Ozark mountain music, and they offered Surrey rides, just rides in Surrey buggies led by mules. And like I said, that was kind of the humble beginnings, and things just grew from there. If you believe what you read on the internet nowadays, in 2025, the Hershey Family Entertainment Company is worth an estimated $1 billion. And that's a pretty good increase over the last 65 years when they just basically started with Marble Cave, just a big hole in the ground.
That that is quite an increase. It really is. Well, what are some of the lost rides and attractions that this is the part you've all waited for, folks, or one of the parts, I'm sure, that we're going to remember seeing as kids, but is no longer available? Why don't you take us through those if you don't mind?
But sure, no problem at all. As the park has grown over the years, the rides and attractions have been changed out periodically over a period of time. Silver Dollar City has always kind of been on the cutting edge in regards to theme parks. They try to update things on a regular basis to continually bring in a new crowd. There's a lot of people our age, maybe a little bit younger than us, maybe a little bit older than us, and they remember this classic Silver Dollar City that we grew up with, and they sometimes say, it's terrible that they got rid of this or they got rid of that. Well, I understand how people feel, but if Silver Dollar City was exactly the same as it was in, say, 1972, after you visited the park a few times, you'd probably never go back again because it would be boring. I
Hmm.
mean, you've always got to change things out to keep the excitement going. And, Silver Dollar City has done that. But let me run down through a list of some of the things that are no longer there that we all do remember very fondly. One of those is the Jim Owens float trip ride. Now, the float trip was a family friendly ride on an Ozark John boat through the woods of the Ozarks. And as you floated along on this ride, you went around and saw different little scenes. One thing that comes to mind is they had something they called Echo Rock. If you would call out at Echo Rock, you would hear your voice echo back at you. Of course, that was a special effect, but it was a lot of fun for kids to hoot and holler right there at that location and then hear their voice come echoing back at them. You went around the corner, there was an outhouse perched on top of an Ozark bluff, and as your boat passed by, it looked like the outhouse was going to come crashing down on top of your boat. There also was a moonshine still with some hogs slurping up the moonshine, and there was the River Gang Clubhouse, and there was a bunch of kids on the river swimming and skinny dipping, and you never really got to see the kids, but you saw their fishing pole bob, and you saw the water splash as they were trying to hide because they were skinny dipping. And another thing was the animal haven. They sometimes put prairie dogs or goats or other little animals in the animal haven, and everybody got excited seeing the live animals as they passed by. And there was a scary whirlpool. And as your boat went around the whirlpool, you saw a man's arm clutching his hat, and he was trying not to slide down into the whirlpool and be lost forever. And then you would go into a dark cave, and there would be special effects in there, like a big water dump that would pour gallons and gallons of water down on top of your boat. You'd come shooting through the other end of the cave, and there would be water geysers that appeared to wet down your boat and everybody in it, but then as soon as your boat got to it, they'd magically stop. But it was a lot of fun for everybody. Like I said, a really good family-friendly ride. And I'm very fond of that ride because that was the first ride that I worked at when I was in the attractions department. The float trip was there from about 1968 or 69 until 1980. And then it was removed and replaced with the American Plunge, which is still there today, of course.
I think some of the outhouse and the man twirling his hat were used in the Lost River later on.
Yes, I do believe that's correct. The way I remember is they just basically built the American Plunge on top of the existing float trip, changed some of the effects, reversed the flow of the water there, and put in the big hill. If you go to the Plunge today and you look around, you'll still see some of the old channels from the float trip, and you may see a few of the old special effects. I know there's a natural bridge that they had built across the channel. The last time that I was there, it was still over the Plunge. But that's kind of Silver Dollar City's way of, nodding their head at what was there before. And just also from a cost standpoint, when they put in a new ride, if they leave in some of the old features from a previous ride, it's more cost efficient.
Sure.
Yeah. Now, another one that I can remember is Slantin' Sam's The Miner's Shack. Now, a lot of people may be scratching their head because Slantin' Sam's was there from about the mid-'60s to, maybe about 68, 69, 70. But that was an attraction that was upgraded as well. We know it today as Grandfather's Mansion. Now, Sam, the Miner's Shack, is the bottom level of Grandfather's Mansion. And so when they improved it, they just built the top floor over it that we know today with the music box and the tilting room and the upside down rooms. Then you'll remember you go down a staircase. When you're at the bottom of the staircase, you're in the old Slantin' Sam's. It's been remodeled over the years to make it look like Grandfather's Mansion, of course, but it's all the same effects. The tilted floors, the pool table where the ball rolls up the hill, the magical water faucet that's not connected to anything, and yet water spews out of it. There's a porch swing in there that people sit in to get an unusual effect when they're sitting in it, and there's a bed you can lay on that's kind of wacky because it's at an angle.
Mm-hmm.
There used to be a ladder that you would climb up, and then when you got to the top of the ladder, there was nothing up there. It was just silly. You would climb up to the top of the ladder and find nothing there. Then you had to climb back down.
I remember the ladder.
Yeah, they took that out a few years ago.
Yeah, the ladder was still there when I was a kid, and we'd all climb up there just to climb up there. I think maybe they added something for you to look at later.
They may have.
But
I spent a lot of time working there, but there was a period of time in the late 80s and in the early to mid 90s that I didn't have a chance to go out and visit the park very often, so I really don't know what they might have changed during that time.
Yeah, I just remember you couldn't knock on John's door or knock before entering John's door on the way down.
You're right. That's always funny to listen to the sound effects come out of there. Last time I was there, they had zoo animals hooting and hollering behind the door. And in the past, I know that they've had like a cocktail party sounds going on with people laughing and glasses clinking. Always kind of funny. But, if you're like me, every time you walk past John's room, you knock on the door anyway.
Yeah, you always do it. The door shows it. I mean, for years, the Knox had just took the paint straight off of it. You were on bare wood at John's room.
Yeah, exactly. And another old attraction that I remember and that I also am fond of is Herman the Hermit's Treetop House. That's another attraction that the theme changed over the years. Some people know it as Rocky's Root Beer Factory. Other people know it as Huck Finn's Hideaway. Now, when they first opened it up, it was known as Herman the Hermit's Treetop House, and this would have been in the mid to late 60s. And they changed the theme slightly in the real early 70s, and it became the Rocky Root Beer Factory. And then about the mid 70s, well, I take that back. Let me think now. It was about 80, 81. They upgraded it again to Huck Finn's Hideaway. Now, Herman the Hermit's Treetop House had a bunch of crazy gadgets in it, silly inventions that the so-called Herman the Hermit invented. And he was kind of like a recluse that hid from everybody, and he had all these weird contraptions inside his house, and it was just fun and family-friendly. And then later on, when it became Rocky's Root Beer Factory, they had a lot of those same contraptions, but now the theme was Rocky had a root beer factory that worked out of the treetop house, and people could walk through the factory. Later on, his Huck Finn's Hideaway got a massive overhaul. One of the floors of the treetop house had punching bags in it.
Yeah.
And then there was the other floor had like air rifles you could shoot, and a fortune teller. If you pressed the button, the fortune teller would tell you a funny fortune. And then there were other kid-friendly activities in there as well. So, again, that's just another way of just upgrading things from time to time over the years, just to keep things kind of fresh and interesting.
I remember finding it so unique when I was like 10 years old that those air guns were actually like old single shot 12 gauge shotguns that they'd mounted up there, and they had an air hose to them. And every time
yeah, exactly. Those things, they packed a punch too when you pulled the trigger. Man, they really made quite a poof sound.
Yeah, they did. It was, of course, you think about some of their competition. One of them was, and we're kind of a neat segue into one of our other ones. One of their competition was Frontier City down in Oklahoma, which was basically a park full of jungle gyms. You could go on and do things and different things like that. And you can see when that thing came out that Silver Dollar City responded to the market and made some more of these other play areas for folks. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Go ahead and take us through some other things that are no longer there.
Sure. One of the things that people finally remember is the Butterfield stagecoach line, and this was an actual uh, stagecoach pulled by mules. And the stagecoach depot was located approximately where the current furniture factory is located. And people would get in the stagecoach. They'd go over a bridge over past the Jim Owens float trip ride and around the perimeter of the park in the woods. And there was a few different little scenes that you would see, but for the most part, it was just simply a ride through the woods in a stagecoach. And the stagecoach drivers sometimes had some jokes and some banter that they'd do with the guests. And it was a very popular ride. It was there from the mid-'60s until about 1980. The problem with some of these attractions is they were intended for the days when Silver Dollar City didn't get 2 million guests a year like they do now. And by 1979, 1980, there was over 1 million people coming to the park every year, and there was a capacity issue. You couldn't move a lot of guests through a ride like the stagecoach. The last few years the stagecoach was there, they actually had to restrict it to children only. And they eventually just phased out the stagecoach again, I think probably because of a capacity issue. It was just too hard to load everybody up, go around the perimeter of the park, come back into town, unload everybody. It took quite a lot of time. They had several stagecoaches, and they just kept them rolling in the mid to late 70s, just from the time the park opened until it closed. But again, it was just a capacity issue, I do believe, with the stagecoach. It's one of those things that's just very fondly looked upon by people of our generation and missed.
It seems like to me that they would bring it out on special occasions with the animals, but they weren't giving rides. I remember the stagecoach being there and being used, but you couldn't get a ride on it. But I think I was also there for some special events where they used it too.
Right, yeah. In more recent years, somebody actually found one of the stagecoaches that had been sold by Silver Dollar City after the ride closed, and they restored that stagecoach and brought it back to the park. And from time to time, they'll still bring that back, and people can look at it and talk to the people who own it now, and so on and so forth. But part of the reason why they don't have the stagecoach and a lot of live animals on the park like they used to in years past is because of insurance reasons. And it costs several $1,000s to insure a mule. And if you think about it today, back in the old days, people would pet a mule maybe on the park and maybe get their fingers nipped if they got too close to the mule's mouth. But nowadays, people are sue happy. Yeah. And so the park just as a liability and a cost-saving measure, they said, well, let's try to keep the most of the live animals off the park. And, of course, now the stagecoach, with the crowds they have today, that would block streets and prevent flow of people walking the streets. So that's probably another reason why they've gotten rid of it over the years. It's just one of those things that we can all look back with nostalgia and enjoy and remember. And nowadays, all those pathways that the stagecoach used to be on, they're covered up with other things like wildfire, powder keg, and the little gravel roadways are now paved, and part of the queues for the American Plunge, and the Lumber Camp restaurant is part of that area. So they've redeveloped that area of the park, and they would have to find another place to put a stagecoach if they ever brought it back.
Yeah, I don't look for the stagecoach to come back.
Yeah, and as long as we're talking about vehicles that are mule powered, we can talk about one of the earliest rides they had. That's the Surrey rides, and these were just Surrey wagons that people could take a ride in around the Main Street area back in the early to mid '60s. I think they phased those out pretty early on, maybe after about 5 or 6 years. And that was because the stagecoach was there, and then they had began developing the flooded mine, and they developed the float trip, and so there were other things to do. And again, as time passes, you just switch things out, change things up, and keep the crowds coming in for something new.
When did the Surrey rides quit?
I don't have an exact year on that. That was actually gone before I was employed there. I'm making an assumption that it was only they were only active in the '60s, because by the time my family visited in '69 or '70, they were already gone.
Yeah.
And another mule-powered ride was the one mule swing, and that was simply a carousel with benches on it, and it was powered by a mule. And they used the one mule swing throughout the '60s, and in the early to mid '70s, they still had it. When I moved over to the attractions department in the late '70s, it was there for a year or two, and I think it was in the summer of '79. I was one of the mule skinners at the one mule swing, and it was a fun, family friendly ride, but something sad happened about 81. The old mule that pulled the mule swing, he sadly passed away. And I think Silver Dollar City just used that as an excuse to phase out the one mule swing and to move in another direction. And so that's what they did.
You know, it's funny. I had the little place at record player, and you could get books with and follow the story. It's kind of how I learned to read. But my sister got me one year for Christmas the story of Homer Allen and the little mule named Rufus, the world's smallest mule, who he built a carousel and he got this tiny mule to push it around. It was it was a good little piece of marketing right there, built for their. It was locally printed. You could tell it was locally printed, but it was a good piece of marketing.
Yeah, there was a period of time there in the mid '70s where Silver Dollar City produced their own coloring books and their children's books. And I think you had mentioned in conversation that there was a little record that came with the mule thing. And those were pretty popular. I remember those being sold in the gift shops back then.
Yeah, it is. It's just kind of a unique deal, and the fact that I still can kind of I won't bother you with it, but I can still even remember it, almost the word for, well, not word for word, but I can pretty well remember it, and that's been a long time ago.
Well, that's that's one of those things about Silver Dollar City. If your family went to the park on any kind of a regular basis, and you were a young kid or maybe in your teens, boy, you really remember those days, and you remember a lot of the detail because it really meant so much to the people back in that era. I mean, I tell you, I had a lot of fun times at Silver Dollar City as both a guest and an employee.
Yeah. Well, this takes us to one of my favorite rides, and it was so funny because it's also my mother's maiden name. My mother's maiden name is Dugan. So tell us about Rube Dugan's Diving Bell.
Well, you're definitely talking to the right guy in regards to this. This was the attraction that I spent 5 years working at. Well, actually, I think it was 6 years working at it. Anyway, I was there from roughly about '79 through '84. And what Rube Dugan's Diving Bell was a simulation attraction. Silver Dollar City in the mid 70s decided it was time for a major expansion. And so in 1977, they opened what they called the Deep Woods area, which is the area around Lake Silver. And Rube Dugan's Diving Bell was the keynote attraction. And it was a Ozark ride on a submarine in the depths of Lake Silver looking for a lost treasure. And since I had worked there several summers, I had accumulated a big old stack of information about that ride that you may find really interesting. There was a guy named Tom Riedenbach who had formerly worked for Disney. In fact, he was one of Walt Disney's last hand-picked architects and ride designers. And in 76, he had his own company, and Jack Hershen ran into him at an industry gathering, and Jack said, Tom, could you come on up and visit Silver Dollar City and maybe design some attraction concepts for us? So in 75, 76, he did that, and he came up with the idea for Rube Dugan's Diving Bell. Of course, now Silver Dollar City bases all of its rides, shows, and attractions on some piece of Ozark history or some piece of Ozark legend. And so the Diving Bell backstory is part of the lost treasures legends of the Ozarks. Everybody is pretty much familiar with the Yoakum Silver Dollar legend, and they used the Yoakum Silver Dollar legend kind of mishmatched with Spanish conquistador legend and so forth, and put together their own backstory that Grandpappy Dugan had a silver mine, and that the rains of 1821 came and flooded out his mine and made Lake Silver, and Grandpappy was lost, and all of his silver was lost. And later on, Rube Dugan came along, and he decided he was going to find Grandpappy's silver, and so he invented a submarine. And I played the role of Junior Dugan, who was Rube Dugan's daffy, goofy, hillbilly nephew. And so it was me and a bunch of other guys who played that same role. We all piloted the Diving Bell and took everybody on an underwater adventure. Lots of thrills, lots of spills. And it was a pretty exciting ride, very convincing for its time. There were a lot of people who I've spoken with or communicated with online over the last 10 or 15 years who said that they remember riding that as maybe a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old, and they were absolutely terrified that they were going to drown and nobody was going to make it back to the lake, back to the surface of the lake, which is pretty funny. If you knew all the technology behind that, basically the Diving Bell capsule never went underwater. We were always in the building that was next to the lake, right, but with special effects and film and a motion capsule, a capsule that moved in sync with the action on the film, special effects like water leaks and so forth. Again, it made it a very convincing ride, and it was a whole lot of fun working there. I really look back on those years with a lot of fondness, and in fact, in more recent years, as part of my writing career, I've written articles about the Diving Bell, and I have produced a couple of books about the history of the Diving Bell, and they are available on Amazon.com.
I'm going to have to look back because I remember going there and my mom taking pictures of everything, and I thought it was kind of funny because we went there 3 or 4 times a year. It's not like we're ever not going back. And I bet I've got a picture of you in there.
That's a good possibility because me and the guys that I worked with, we were photographed dozens of times a day. And I'll tell you, I couldn't tell you, I couldn't even guess how many people might have old pictures from the late 70s or early 80s in their family scrapbooks that had pictures of the fellows that worked with me, or maybe of me myself. Who knows?
And if you've got some of those and you want to share them, there is a Facebook group, as we've mentioned. We're going to circle back to that. So if you do have something out there, I bet there's other people that would like to see it.
Oh, I'm sure that there are. Yeah, in fact, I have posted some pictures on the SDC fans page of the diving bell and some of the other old lost attractions. And anybody who wants to get on Facebook and become a member of that fan group, it would be fantastic. We're almost 20,000 strong now, so there's a lot of people out there who really like to reminisce about the old days at Silver Dollar City and keep up to date with the things that are going on there now.
Yeah, it's just a great medium to do that. Now we've got a couple more here. One of them I spent a lot of time on, and one of them I do not remember. Talk to us about the Medicine Wagon Show.
Yeah, sure. Well, in the early days, back in the 60s and early to mid 70s, Silver Dollar City had an old-fashioned medicine wagon that generally sat up on the town square, and they would do these melodrama shows. Now, back in the day, as part of the show, what they were doing is trying to imitate the old medicine show, the medicine shows that traveled across the country back in the old days. And so they would have a huckster salesman up on the stage trying to peddle his miracle pills. Of course, now at Silver Dollar City, the miracle pills were just candy. But he would sell you a little package of, or a little bottle of so-called pills that were really candy. And then there was a big show with some singing and dancing and comedy surrounding it. There were different shows throughout the years. And again, this was during the period of the 60s through about the mid-70s. And later on, somebody said, it's probably not a good idea to push selling candy pills to kids and families, because there might be a kid who misunderstands and then goes home and thinks that the candy in their or that the pills in their parents' pill jar is candy,
Yeah.
I mean, times change. Yeah. So they eventually phased the medicine wagon show out. They did use that for other kinds of shows, like different Ozarks musicians, or they did a magic show on that stage for a while. But sadly, the medicine wagon show is gone. But they did have some pretty clever and pretty humorous shows that went along with that. Now, I think I know the attraction that you spent a lot of time at, because you're just a few years younger than me, and that would have been Tom Sawyer's Landing, am I right?
You bet.
Well, Tom Sawyer's Landing began about 1980, and it was about that time that Silver Dollar City was trying to find more family-friendly attractions for little kids. And so they discovered that there was actually a theme park, I want to say it was in Pennsylvania, called Sesame Place, based on the Sesame Street characters. But basically that theme park was essentially a giant playground that was Sesame Street themed. And so they went and visited that, and they said, hey, we ought to put in our own playground at the park that would be excellent for the kids that were really young. What could we put in there? So they put in a lot of kind of jungle gym type equipment, and they put in a cable slide, and they put in a ballroom. You could jump in the room full of balls and throw balls at everybody. And as time passed through the 80s and on into the 90s and even on into the early 2000s, the attractions in Tom Sawyer's Landing changed. They added different things. There was the balloon chase ride there for a while. They used the adjoining Wagon Works barn as a carousel barn at one time. And Tom Sawyer's Landing was a very, very popular kids' playground, the first big kids' playground at the park. And over the years, we've seen them build other kids areas, uh, including the Grand Exposition that's there now, and the Fireman's Landing, or the Fire District as they call it now. Several years ago, they had a playground area called Geyser Gulch. But Tom Sawyer's Landing was the first of its kind on that park. And in the early 2000s, they phased that out, put in Tom and Huck's River Splash at that location. And, like I said, from time to time, they just change things out, bring in new attractions, take out the old. And so that's kind of a brief history of Tom Sawyer's Landing there.
As a 10-year-old, it was the most wonderful thing I'd ever seen in my life, because you could play like you were a pirate on it, or you could. I remember in probably junior high school at this sounds kind of funny. At Young Christians Weekend, they sold water guns, and they all, not the realistic Silver Dollar City guns out of Ezra's toy shop that my dad thought I'd bought a Winchester, um, but these plastic water guns, and the whole thing turned into a water gun fight at Young Christians Weekend and I'd never, it was just an amazing play space. Even up as an early teen, I would still go run through it real quick. And
definitely so. And that's one of those places that has a lot of fond memories for you because of the age you were at and the people you were with. I mean, their slogan at Silver Dollar City nowadays is making memories worth repeating. And, about these attractions we've discussed already, boy, I know there are many, many people listening to the podcast who have great memories. And so they have brought their families back. And I mean, you know how it is. You're at that age. I mean, my grandparents visited the park. My parents visited the park. My brothers and sisters and I visited the park. Then later on, when we got married, our kids came to the park. I'm at the point where the grandchildren have all been there, and some of the great grandchildren are coming along, and we've got to get them out to the park sometime in the next few years.
That's a wonderful thing, and it's wonderful, I guess, for you to say. Back in my day.
Right. Well, the older I get, the more of an old fogey they look at me like. I'm just outdated, and I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. And it's like, okay, Grandpa, sit over there in the corner, and we're going to go ride another roller coaster.
Yeah, we'll bring you some ice cream.
Right.
Or now you say, I'm going to go spend an hour watching them blow glass,
Right.
Because I'm at the point now where I can sit still long enough to watch it. All right, we're going to break for a wonderfully worded fake advertisement now. Bald knobber for hire. Do you have a neighbor beating his wife and dilatory and tending to his family? Got a feller that won't go to church, makes and not making good on his other social obligation? Maybe he needs a bundle of switches on his doorstep, followed by a good drubbing. Then hire a ball knobber. Bald knobber for hire is the latest innovation from the August Carlson Talent Placement Agency. Ball knobbers have many uses. Children getting beat up after school? Hire a ball knobber. Daughter getting harassed by local toughs? Hire a ball knobber. Need a babysitter? Ball knobbers make the best. Ball knobbers provide safety, surety, and calm against a virile sea of ne'er-do-wells, thugs, and criminals. Trouble by thieves? Ball knobbers will tend to it. When you hire a ball knobber, he comes with an ironclad no jack with your shit money back guarantee. Call today for your knobber. 1-800-VIGILANCE. That's 1-800-VIGILANCE. Looking for a career change? Think you're tough enough to wear the mask? We have placement for multiple knobber positions in Southwest Missouri, ranging from protections to collections to daycare and more. contact the August Carlson Talent Placement Agency for the next training school near you. Now, back with Mark Kumming and our program.
Woo! I tell you what, that's hard to follow.
Well, you
My.
know, yeah, it does segue us into the mother of all Silver Dollar City rides. I'm going to kind of change the outline here. Fire in the Hole. Why
Oh,
don't
that's
you
right.
why don't you take
That
us
was
through that ride? Not
wow.
literally, but take us through that ride.
I sure will. Yeah, Fire in the Hole was really one of the first really innovative rides that Silver Dollar City had. It was built about 72, 73, and it very, very quickly became a very popular ride with the guests and something that everybody looked forward to going on. It was a combination of a dark ride and a roller coaster, and basically an indoor roller coaster. And as your roller coaster car rolled through the attraction, you'd pass scenes of the burning of the town of Silver Dollar City. And again, as we were talking earlier, Silver Dollar City bases its rides and attractions on bits of Ozark history. So I'm going to veer off into the history first of all. Um, Back in the Bald Knobber era, the Bald Knobbers were actually active in Taney County, Christian County. I think they were active a little bit in Douglas County, and some claim that they were active in Stone County as well. Now, we're talking legend
Feel free
here.
to elaborate on this. We are going to have, just for the general listening public out there, a big bald number episode,
Okay.
because there's evidence that they were as far up as Lebanon, in Marshfield, in other counties, but they never, when indictments started coming down, those chapters folded pretty quick. So,
Yeah.
but continue. I'm just putting a teaser out there for the big ball number episode coming up.
Well, certainly, certainly. Well, I haven't done the kind of research on the Bald Knobbers that you have done, but this is part of the legend surrounding Silver Dollar City and the fire and the whole story. But back in the late 1880s is when William Lynch came down from Canada and purchased the cave property and started to develop it for tourism. And he was going back and forth between Canada. But back in those days, the Ozarks were especially close-knit. The local people, close-knit, clannish. They were suspicious of outsiders. And somebody burnt the old mining town of Maramos that was built around the cave entrance down. And to be honest about it,
just literally said, well, let's have a few beers and go set the town on fire.
Well, here's what I think happened. Again, this is more legend than anything, and I'm not as well versed in this aspect of the history of the park as I should be. But when in the 1880s, I guess it was, there was about a 10, 15-year period of time where they actually mined back guano out of Marble Cave. And they built a little town around it with a blacksmith shop and a general store and a few other things. And then when the bat guano ran out, they just abandoned the town and it sat there. Nobody really lived there. But, enter the Lynch family. And Mr. Lynch bought the property, was going to develop it. And again, like I was saying, the people who lived in the Ozarks, very clannish. They didn't like outsiders. They were suspicious. And more than likely, somebody just said, let's burn it down and scare off the guy from Canada. And anyway, it didn't deter Mr. Lynch at all. He came down and started developing the cave and built a few little cabins and a little restaurant or a little cafe or whatever you want to call it, and operated the cave on and off. Sometimes he had to closed the place down because it didn't generate that much business at first. But anyway, the fire in the hole legend that they built up around the ride is part history, but part legend and partly just made up. And so, were the Bald Knobbers actually active that much in Stone County? I don't know. Even if they were, Lynch didn't buy Marvel Cave until long after the Bald Knobbers had disbanded and were no longer a thing. So anyway, just for theme park fun, they just mishmashed the Bald Knobbers, the Cave of Maramos, and Marvel Cave history, and they put together a ride that features the Bald Knobbers burning the town down, and the townspeople either fleeing or fighting the fire. And so they just built a roller coaster around all that silliness, and it's rather interesting. Part of that, with every Ozark legend, there's a little bit of truth, but where the truth ends and the horse hockey begins, who knows?
So, just to show you what an evil child I was, I conned my grandmother into riding that with me. And she prayed the whole way. I mean,
oh, yes.
Oh, I don't like this. Oh, I don't like this.
Yes. Well, anyway, as you well know, the Fire in the Hole was a rather modest roller coaster, but it was just fun because you rolled through this thing in the dark and you never knew what was lying ahead of you.
Sure.
But as we all know, things change at Silver Dollar City from time to time. And a few years ago, the park officials determined that the old building that housed Fire in the Hole was just getting too old. It was getting hard to maintain. And so in the last few years, they built another building, moved the ride over to it, improved the special effects, and we have Fire in the Hole #2 now, which is a very popular attraction still. There's a lot of nostalgia connected with the new ride, and yet at the same time, there's a few little differences that have updated things for today's audience.
Did Elmer ever get his pants on?
Well, I think he's still got a problem there, but you'll have to ride the ride to figure it out.
Poor Elmer. He's kind of the Ozark syphilis. He just never gets his pants on.
Poor guy. Well, anyway, as long as we're talking about legends and lore, I'm going to move on to some other things.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about the beginning of Marvel Cave.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask you is Fire in the Hole, as I remember these legends, I got told them on the school bus. Fire in the Hole had its own set of urban legends about it.
Oh, yes.
And that there was somebody who stood up at the train and was beheaded. That was the legend I heard in like 3rd grade, and I didn't want to ride it again. Scared to death anyway. Can you speak to those legends? Was there anyone that was ever killed on the ride?
Well, yes. We have to go back to 1980. There was an accident at Fire in the Hole, and in all seriousness, it was completely an accident. A fully loaded train car, was accidentally routed into a maintenance area. And there was some low-hanging bars over the track in that maintenance area.
Ooh.
And the maintenance people saw the train coming back into the area, and they saw that it was loaded, and they all immediately jumped up and shouted at all the people, duck your head. And of course, if you've got 15 or 20 people on a car like that, there's always going to be somebody who either doesn't hear or they think it's part of the ride and it's a joke or whatever. But unfortunately, one fellow did bang his head on one of the low overhanging bars, and he did sustain some sort of a head injury that resulted in his passing.
That's horrible, and thankfully not as dramatic as it's dramatic enough. Yeah, I can't imagine being
Yeah.
on the maintenance line, sitting there waiting to grease something. You know,
Oh yeah.
oh, that would be
I was
horrible.
actually. Oh, it was a pretty horrible day. I actually was working on park at the time, and I did know the people who were working there that day,
Oh,
and I did know the man who was dispatching the train cars, and it was a devastating blow for the park at that time. They immediately closed the attraction. They made sure that everybody else was okay. There might have been one or two that sustained some sort of an injury, but there was some sort of compensation for the family of the fellow who lost his life. And Silver Dollar City reworked the track so that an accident like that could never, ever happen again. And the good news is it never did happen again. Now, there have been, as the park has grown over the years, other accidents with some of the different attractions and so forth. And one that comes to mind is a couple of seasons ago, they had a train derailment and one of the cars landed on its side. There were a few injuries, but fortunately, nobody seriously hurt. Now, I can tell you this as a former employee, Silver Dollar City always took safety as a high priority. And every day when employees come into work in the attractions and on the rides, we used to go through, and I know they still go through these things today, but they go through checkpoints. They run through the rides backwards and forward. They make sure everything is okay. In fact, on some of these roller coasters they've got today, they check every bolt and every screw along the track to make sure everything is okay. If you look at Silver Dollar City's safety record in terms of accidents over the years, you would see that they take safety and the overall positive guest experience is a high priority, and they have a better safety record than a lot of theme parks in other parts of the countries.
well,
Of the
I tell you
country.
what, there's an attention to detail when you go to Silver Dollar City. You know, back in the days when the general store sold cigarettes and
Right.
and everybody smoked, you know, there were probably a dozen guys that all they did is go around and just sweep up cigarette butts
Exactly.
and pick up trash. And I mean, it you go and then you go to another theme park, maybe if you're on vacation, or you go to like Six Flags. Six Flags I always thought was filthy compared to Silver Dollar City.
Well, they do like to provide a superior experience for their guests because, again, they want to have you and your family come back again and again.
Are there any new legends? Are there any new stories or ghosts of Silver Dollar City?
Well, it is funny that you would ask that because in more recent years, as I have done research on topics of Ozarks history, I have ran across a number of legends and lore and ghost stories connected to Silver Dollar City. And the funny thing is, all those years ago when I worked at the park, I never once experienced any kind of a ghostly thing or unusual thing. Everything was explainable. But apparently, I guess as the years have passed, there have been a lot of people who have apparently had some sort of an odd experience of one kind or another. And one of those that comes to mind is Sullivan's Mill. Sullivan's Mill is one of the original arts and crafts shops. It's an actual working grist mill. And a few years ago,
Is that
one of the
next to the flour?
well-known,
Is that next to the bakery?
yes,
Okay.
exactly, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Sullivan's Mill is one of the original buildings on the park, and a few years ago, one of the millers, Franklin Capps, wrote a little book about his years of working at the mill, and he said that there was some people that worked in the delivery end of Silver Dollar City that bring products into the different shops that would come into the mill early in the morning before the park opened, and they would hear strange noises, and they would get the feeling that maybe somebody was watching them. In fact, one guy refused to go into the mill alone at that time of the morning because it just creeped him out. And so, anyway, that's one legend surrounding the
Was
Sullivan's Mill.
Sullivan's Mill a building they brought from somewhere else, or is it one they built on site?
They built it on site, and they just happened to find the mill parts
Uh-huh.
in different locations and put them all together for the mill there at the park.
Okay.
And then there is a legend connected to Fire in the Hole also regarding ghosts because of that accident that I was just telling you about. Some people have claimed that there is a ghost in the old building. Now, I have never really heard a whole lot about that, and I've never experienced anything in my years of being on park at Fire in the Hole. But, whenever you hear about somebody accidentally dying on a roller coaster, I guess you just assume that maybe there's a ghost connected to it some way.
Yeah. Yeah. There are other visitors that are not human, but are frequently seen around the park. Tell us about some of the other uh, critters.
Yeah, well, when you build a theme park in the middle of the woods in the Ozarks, you're going to have animals come into the park. And when I was an employee there, it was routine to see squirrels and chipmunks. And nowadays, people who shoot video and post it on social media, they'll take pictures of a skunk walking out on the pathway eating some popcorn that somebody dropped, or maybe a possum or a family of possums. Every now and then you'll see a deer on the park. And one thing that I can definitely confirm is, snakes. Snakes alive. There are snakes at Silver Dollar City. Again, it's a theme park built in the woods. And I had a personal and an up close relationship with a green water snake during the time that I was at the diving bell. Every day we had to go and get into a John boat and go out onto the lake with a net to pick up trash that had fallen into the lake.
Okay.
And we kept our
I just
John
never
boat
think
flipped
about
over.
those things.
Yeah.
I would think, of course you would. Now you mention it, it'd be like, well, of course you'd have to do that.
Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, we used to keep our John boat behind the attraction on the lake shore, and it was flipped upside down to keep the rain from filling up the boat. So every day when I would go back to get in the boat, I would take a broom or the net, the handle on the net that we used, and smack the bottom of the boat a couple of times so the little green snake who lived in there could escape and flee across the water. And when I saw the green, and when I say little, I'm talking probably about 5 foot long and probably about thick around as your arm. But anyway, he made a pretty good living on the lake with the fish and the frogs and the bugs that lived down there. And he just used our boat to stay dry, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, after he got pushed out from my making a lot of racket, I'd flip the boat over and go out on the lake and get the trash with the net. Everybody was happy. I'd collect up the trash. I'd turn the boat back over and go back to work. And the snake would come back across the lake and hide under the boat till the next day.
I've always wondered, and I'm a fisherman, and I remember seeing as a kid those big catfish right there, and I always wondered, did anybody ever, an employee ever sneak in there and catch any of those fish?
You just hit the nail on the head. I'm going to tell you another funny story. When I was working over at the float trip, a lot of our maintenance guys, they were avid fishermen, and they would go out to Table Rock Lake, and they would catch a mess of fish, and they'd put them in a live well. And then they'd dump the live well and all the fish into a big cooler, and they would carry it up to the Jim Owens float trip, and they'd throw those fish in the concrete boat channel. And of course, those fish would gather up around our boat dock, and as the people walked by to get on their ride, they would feed those fish popcorn and funnel cakes, and by the end of the season, those little fish that the maintenance guys caught were huge fish. And when the park closed at the end of October, they drained the channel so they could do winter maintenance. And those fish, they all gathered right there around the dock where there was a deeper hole there in the channel. And they would just stick in a net, get all their fish out, and then they'd clean them and eat fish all winter.
Oh, that's something. That's hilarious.
And, of course, down on Lake Silver, they threw fish in there too. Now, Lake Silver is a natural pond, and they threw some dye in there a few years ago and found out that the pond actually drains into Marble Cave. And if you put dye in Lake Silver, in about 3 or 4 days, it will have gone through the cave and will wind up down on Indian Point in Table Rock Lake.
I'll be darned.
But they did stock Lake Silver with the catfish and some of the other fish that they caught. And in the wintertime, they draw down Lake Silver for winter maintenance. And they do indeed go out there and get their fish, or at least they have done that in years past. I've noticed in recent years they've stocked Lake Silver with carp and with goldfish. And so a lot of times if you go look on the edge of Lake Silver today when you visit, you might see some big old carp or big old goldfish in there. And I think they were just put in there for ornamental reasons for, people to look at.
Yeah, and they keep it clean too.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
Keep it clean. Well, so it's fun. You've taken us through where it started and where it how that growth period went. Prior to everything we've talked about today is pretty well prior to the big Branson boom.
Right.
And that may be a episode. That other part may be an episode all of its own. But where we start with a cave and a few shops. Tell us about what that growth has led to today and what that attendance looks like.
Yeah, most certainly. As I mentioned back in 1960, when they first opened Silver Dollar City, they found that the attendance at the cave and at the Silver Dollar City frontier town they had there at the time had jumped up to about 125,000 people in that first season. That was a huge number back then. By the time I worked on the park in the mid to late 70s, attendance had jumped up to past 1 million people in a year. And of course, the park was 4 or 5 times bigger than it was when it was first built. So they could accommodate 1 million people. But since the mid to late 80s, the park has continued to grow and grow. And now, annually, they get somewhere between 2 million and 2.2 million. Now, back in my days, back in the late 70s, early 80s, if we had 20,000 people on park, it was jam-packed. Mm-hmm. And today, they have several days, especially during the Christmas season, where they might have 25,000 people on park. Now, if you go out to see the Christmas lights on a Saturday, you're going to be pretty much most Saturdays, especially if the weather's good, elbow to elbow with the people around you, and it's going to be crowded.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a little tip. If you go in early to see the lights, and you go in to see the first parade that they have, stick around. Because after that first parade, a lot of people leave the park and go do things in Branson. And it's a lot easier to move around the park after that first parade. And then if you want to, you can stay and see the second parade that they have, and then wait till it's about closing time. And you might be able to get around to some of the rides and the shows better if you wait till after that first parade's over.
You know, the Christmas thing, I mean, I understand they've got the resource there. The park used to close around Halloween?
Yes, back in the old days, the tourist season in Branson was from about middle of April till October 31st.
Yeah.
Now, on November 2nd, you could literally run naked down the middle of Highway 76 and nobody would ever see you.
Yeah.
But the people
at the where Mark or
well, no, I'm not going to give you any true confessions here. But long about the late 80s, the people who owned the Grand Country Theater and Complex, they approached Jack Hershend and they approached the owners of Shepherd of the Hills, and they said, why don't we try doing something for Christmas? We might be able to extend the season through December. That'll give us 2 more months of revenue. And so slowly over a period of time, starting about 88, 89, 90, somewhere in there, they started the Ozark Mountain Christmas in Branson. Now, I remember when they first opened Silver Dollar City up for Christmas, they only had like the town square open and
you mean with
maybe
all the
part
lights?
Of the middle of the park.
The first time they did the lights?
Yeah.
They had the toy shop. They had the toy shop open, and they had a live nativity program that went down in that area down there where the bookshop and the bathrooms were, kind of where the furniture factory is. But they had the park closed off, all of everything kind of to the other side of that, and then it didn't go past the road where like the jail and the Tom Sawyer or the Huck Finn's treehouse, etc. It was just sort of that. They had the toy shop in there. You darn right they had the toy shop.
Well, of course, it's Christmas time.
Yeah. But I had a family member working there at that time. Had a couple, actually. One who helped put up the lights. And it was magical to go. We have 2 strings of lights on the tree, maybe a string on the porch, and a light up Santa Claus. And you go there and you see all these lights. And it was just like, wow, how could someone do this?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny though how they have expanded it and have made it what they've made it into. It's one of the best Christmas decorated parks in the country now. They consistently win these awards for having the best Christmas displays, and the entertainment, of course, is top notch. But it all started back in 88, 89, just small, and they grew.
I remember in high school, a club I was a part of took and chartered a school bus, and we just split the cost to get in. You could get like a school, if you had a pass, you didn't have to pay, but you could get in like as a student for like $8 or something like that. And so we just went down there one night after school. And if you hit it on like a Tuesday, it was vacant. But
yeah. If you could ever hit the park on a slow night, it was just no lines, no waiting, do everything as much as you want.
I have twin boys, and I took them when they were like maybe 7 or 8. And we got down there and it started snowing. And I said, "Are you going to close the park?" I said, "No, the park stays open till 9 unless we think the weather is just really bad." And we saw the parade and everything. Then we had the parks to ourselves in the snow. It was wonderful. And the train ride lighted in the snow. Oh, it was gorgeous. So if you can go when
Yeah.
it's snowing, now you could also end up at the bottom of that hill pretty quick if you aren't careful. But if you go when it's snowing, I encourage you to get a chance to go see it because it just adds something.
Well, they do a great job with that, and as we've mentioned, they've shifted and changed and grown over the years and offered different things, and that's what you get when you have a successful business. In fact, the success of Silver Dollar City led to the Hershen family expanding their holdings across the nation, and they have well over 24 properties, other theme parks, aquariums, and they partnered back in the mid 80s with Dolly Parton, and they operate Dollywood.
Yeah, my my brother had worked there, and he would go to Dollywood occasionally, and would tell me, "I've never been to Dollywood. I kind of want to go."
Yeah, a lot of times Silver Dollar City will test out new attraction concepts at Dollywood, see how they go over, and then 2 or 3 years later, you'll see something similar at Silver Dollar City. And it works the other way around as well. Sometimes they try things out at Silver Dollar City, and then 2 or 3 years down the line, they pop up at Dollywood in some fashion.
Well, it's truly fascinating, and it's something that as we all have kind of a shared experience in the Ozarks, and that's one reason I really wanted to do this episode with you, Mark, is because if you grew up here, you went there, and hopefully this episode has triggered some fun family memories of long ago. Well,
Well, I certainly hope so.
yeah, that's what I hope so. So, Mark, I want to thank you for taking your evening, and we can tell we are doing this. If if you think the voice quality is any difference, we did this via iPhone. Um, we could not get our usual stuff to work this evening, and so if this one sounds different, that's why. Just a reminder, folks, if you've got a story for us to share, a mystery that needs plumbed or something, you can drop us a line at our email. That's wildandwoollyozarks@gmail.com. Follow us on this platform as well as all platforms where you get your podcasts so you don't miss a one, and click that ding-a-ling thing so you get alerted. Also, be sure to check us out on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Look for updates and extra content. Thank you very much. So I would like to also thank my producer, Kenneth Herron, media coordinator, Raina Barth. Klein W. Herron is house ornithologist. And thank you again for spending your time with us. We enjoy hearing from you. We enjoy hearing about other legends for us to find, and I want to thank you all for that. Your love and support has been overwhelming. Well, until next time, Mark, if you'd take us home.
Well, you know what? I just say this. It might be a little bit different than what you're used to, but if the creek don't rise, we'll all get together again real soon right here at the Wild and Woolly Ozarks podcast. And until then, God bless and all best wishes.
Well, you all be careful out there. And boys, if you would, please be good to the tourists. Bye now.